Where did you go, my friend?
I am here, my friend. Hey, it's Evan here. I'm here with Vivek Wadhwa, one of my favorite futurists, academics, authors, entrepreneurs, humanitarians. How else would I describe you, Vivek?
Just a normal guy, just a normal guy. But you're my favorite tweeter. I gotta tell you that.
Well, we met on Twitter and I've seen you speak. And so we have a lot to dissect here. But first, let me ask, how are you doing? You well?
I'm doing fine, absolutely. I mean, being in California, the weather's always perfect here, so you make the most of it.
We do. So I've seen you speak about the future of technology, and we do have quite a compelling future indeed, both on the upside and the downside. And you've talked about the opportunities, the threats, the challenges. But what's your state of mind at the moment? Are you glass half empty or half full kind of guy when it comes to tech presently?
Evan, if you follow my tweets, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. One moment I'm tweeting panic about killer drones and the dangers of synthetic biology. The other moment I'm talking about what an amazing world it's going to be and how we can now solve the grand challenges of humanity. Because I see both good and evil happening at the same time. In my book, Driving the Driverless Car, I talked about all of these advances. And I posited that, look, we now have a chance to live in the future of Star Trek, where all of our wants and needs are met, where we just focus on knowledge and enlightenment, essentially. And at the same time, we're faced with this Mad Max darkness. And all hell could break loose. We could have in fact, I talked about the killer viruses and pandemics being possible in the book. Not knowing that we would actually be in this situation of lockdown because of it. But I talked about the dangers of synthetic biology, genetic engineering. I've talked about the dangers of drones and runaway robots and things like that, and also about the dangers. I've written a book, Your Happiness Was Hacked, about the dangers of social media, and I see all of the dark sides, all of the evil coming through, as well as the good side. So, which is it going to be? The fact is, I don't know, because every day we have, who could have imagined January 6th that the United States Capitol would be overrun with a bunch of rioters who were trying to overthrow the president of the United States? I mean, can anyone in their right mind ever have imagined this, 7-8 months ago, or a year ago, let's say? It was unimaginable that this could ever happen in the United States. But what happened was that, social media, aka Mark Zuckerberg, and even Twitter has its dark side, and YouTube and all of these social media types of things started magnifying all the negatives and feeding people more of the disinformation that they were consuming. And they honestly began to believe that they had to save the United States. The rioters weren't evil people by any means. They were patriots in their own minds. And they believed that they had to save the United States from the perils of technology, right? So, and they did what they thought was right. Who could have imagined this even a year ago?
Yeah, I certainly couldn't have. And I'm a bit of a pessimist by nature. So I enjoy, or not enjoy, but I dwell in the negativity a little bit. But there is a positive side, a potential light at the end of this tunnel. Let's talk about some positive uses of technology, whether it's in health, wellness, saving humanity from itself. Give us a bit of an uplifting view of the future of tech in 5, 10, 20 years.
Okay, so the bad news, the Earth is warming up. The good news, the cost of alternative energies is dropping exponentially. So solar and wind in particular are dropping at exponential rates. Every year, the price decreases by 10, 20%, sometimes even more than that. And every year, the number of installations double. It's a virtuous cycle. So if you just look at the data, I mean, forget the blips. I mean, with exponential technologies, you always have some blips. So right now we got a blip because of this issue, that issue. Forget all that. But if you look at the trend, look at the trend in 5-year increments, you'll see that the way we're going by the end of this decade, the cost of energy becomes almost zero. Just like the cost of this the discussion we're having. I mean, a decade ago, we wouldn't have imagined that you and I would be talking. We would bump into each other at a conference, perhaps, but we wouldn't imagine that you and I would be talking over Zoom, and we'd have thousands and eventually tens of thousands of people watching these videos for free. You'd have people in the remotest parts of the world who have access to the same knowledge that people here in Silicon Valley or where you are in Boston do. It was unimaginable, right? Imagine now clean energy costing the same. We're going to cross thresholds within the next 5 or 7 years in which it's on autopilot. Forget about what Joe Biden and President Biden and the administration is doing. Autopilot because of economies of scale and because of decreasing costs. So that's a way of saving the planet. And then you talk about curing disease. To me, curing cancer is very personal because I lost my wife to cancer, and it's my life's mission now to cure cancer and make sure no one suffers the way she did. And that was what she wanted as well. That that her suffering does good for humanity. So what I'm now doing is that I'm working on the largest cancer project in the world, and it's in India. And what are we going to do? We're going to get the information we need to cure cancer, all the genomic data we need, all of the biosamples, all of the the longitudinal histories to understand what caused cancer in the first place and how we can cure it. And we're going to make the data available to anyone and everywhere in the world. When is this going to happen? In the next 5 years or so, we're going to have more data than has ever existed before on this. This is frankly, this is what I'm focused my life on right now. And then another technology. So it's not only cancer you can cure. You can cure every disease like that. I'm also working with a company called HealthCube in India. HealthCube, CUBED is a website if you want to check it out.
I
A
will.
medical device that does the same test as hospitals do. What does the device cost? About $1,000. And what does it do? You can do everything from 12 lead EKGs to blood tests to urine tests at home and diagnose yourself, or get AI to help you diagnose yourself. So that's on curing disease. Another passion of mine right now, and a company I had written about long ago, AIC, Advanced Innovation Center in Chile. Alfredo Zalesi is the scientist behind it. He's one of the greatest humanitarians, greatest scientists of recent times. In fact, I call him a modern day Einstein. He had developed a technology to sanitize water. I mean, there have been no breakthroughs in water sanitation for decades. The last thing we had were the crappy UV and filter-based technologies. Forget all this, nonsense that we've had for the longest time. He found a way to convert water into plasma. Plasma is the fourth state of matter, and back into water. So over the last few years, he's perfected a technology which will cost practically nothing. I mean, I'm talking about $1,000, $2,000 for a village-sized unit powered by solar, which can give you 100% sanitized water, killing all the bacteria and viruses in it. And most recently, he discovered that he could also generate plasma-activated water from this. What the hell is plasma-activated water? Plasma-activated water is nature's secret. How does nature fertilize the soil all over the world and keep everything so healthy? By sending bursts of energy down to Earth, plasma, also known as lightning. We get millions of bolts of lightning, and that converts the nitrogen into nitrates, which is fertilizer, and it basically teaches plants how to defend themselves because it also creates H2O2. So he found that he could generate H2O2 from his machine. So now we're talking about the next agricultural revolution, and I'm helping Alfredo commercialize this next set of technologies. I mean, think about the magnitude of these things I just talked about. We're talking about world-changing inventions being done by small teams of people all over the world. The United States thinks that it owns innovation, that we're arrogant as hell. We think that we're gods over here just because we have clean drinking water, we live in comfortable lives. You and I get to travel to fancy conferences and sit from homes and pontificate. It's the entrepreneurs all over the world who are going to save humanity because they can and because they care about humanity. Unlike the idiots over here in Silicon Valley who are obsessed with making money, crypto this, crypto that, blockchain this, all this BS that you keep hearing. There are people in the world who really care about solving the grand challenges of humanity and uplifting everyone. Those are the people I admire, and those are the ones who are going to save us from Mad Max.
Wow, that's a lot to take on. And in your book, from incremental to exponential,
yes,
you talk about those.
This book. So yeah, this book is more relevant to what I talked about to saving the world, driving the driverless car, because what it does is describe each of the technologies from AI to quantum computing. It talks about what they are, what they mean for us. This is something that your grandma could read or your niece could read. I mean, this is written so that anyone can understand it. It talks about the risks of technologies. This book over here is really for innovation experts, for business executives, for government executives. It's really for people like you and me who now want to use technology and build something with it. It's basically a guide to how trillion-dollar companies are built, secrets of Silicon Valley, and the new methods of innovation in this exponential era. So from incremental to exponential, not everyone will want to read, but driving the driverless car, everyone listening to this will want to read that book. And it's available, if you're dialing in from India, it's available, locally for like $4 or so. Here it's, I think, $15 on Amazon, whatever it might be. It's worth reading.
So that's fascinating because big tech is on everyone's mind. You've been talking about big tech for a decade. What happens when big tech like Apple, who had their big event today, is not just a $2 or $3 trillion company, but is a $100 trillion company, or when Facebook is a $50 trillion company? Are we just going to become sort of serfs to these medieval lords? I mean, what can we expect from big tech over the next few years unchecked?
Evan, I used to respect Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg. If you go back and look at my tweets from the beginning of time, I was a big fan of his. I was talking about how he's going to save the world and what an amazing company it is. Now, every other tweet I seem to tweet is negative, talking about Facebook's evil, because what happened was that money and power corrupt people. They corrupt organizations. And the trouble is that when people have billions of dollars, they want more billions of dollars. It's not like, they've had enough. So Zuckerberg is rich enough for him and his next 100 generations to have more than enough money to live a very comfortable life. Yet, what's he doing? He's selling our souls. He already sold his soul, a long time ago. He's selling our souls right now and monetizing everything about us. He's worse than Big Brother was. He has more powerful, more knowledge than Big Brother was. Zuckerberg turned to the dark side, and he doesn't seem to be happy with no matter how much money Facebook makes. This is what the problem is with these corporations. Tim Cook is a decent human being, okay? Very good values and so on. But I fear that, there too, money has corrupted the company. So this is the problem with having too much money or having too much power, that it turns you to the dark side. You end up selling your soul because you want more and more and more. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, after you have a few $1 million in the bank, you're set. I mean, you have enough to retire on, you have enough to look after your children and so on. After that, the difference between having $0 and $5 million is huge. It's life-changing. If you have zero money, you're focused on day-to-day survival. If you have $5 million in the bank, you're comfortable, your kids are comfortable, you have nothing to worry about. The difference between $5 million and $50 million and $500 million is not going to make an impact on your life. All it's going to do is make you more corrupt and more obsessed with now having $5 billion in the bank. Why? Because some other person that you read about has $5 billion in the bank, therefore you want to have it. That's the problem with too much money and too much power being centralized.
So the Zuckerbergs of the world would argue that we're in a tech race with China and that we have to beef up our defenses against China. What's your view of this new?
The Chinese, I'm also negative about the Chinese, all right? But the Chinese, look at the way they're cracking down on their tech companies because they've seen the evils. And unlike us, they're able to act on, things like antitrust and out of control greed and so on. They're doing the right things in many ways. No, I don't agree with most of what they're doing. Right. But I do agree with a small part of what China is doing.
Ironic, to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I love going through your tweets, and you're prolific on Twitter. It's one of the reasons I love to follow you. So you talk about just a whole variety of topics, things like Facebook's glasses that came out yesterday. I assume you won't be wearing the Facebook glasses around Silicon Valley.
I will when I want to spy on someone. Okay. If I want to turn someone into the police or expose them on Instagram, if I develop a dark side like Zuckerberg and some of these tech executives, then I might wear them. But I have no other purpose for them because I can easily whip out my smartphone and take a video if I need to. It's only if you want to do things surreptitiously, if you want to do things in a way people don't suspect, that you need to have glasses such as those.
Yeah, and yet we're addicted to these gadgets, these shiny objects, I myself included, the latest devices, the latest apps, the latest gadgets, and it feeds in a sort of vicious circle our attention as well. Maybe we could shift focus to the pandemic. We're still in a very, very difficult spot. Do you have a scenario in mind on how this thing plays out over the next few months, both in terms of getting us out as well as next steps for us in the U.S. and the world, who frankly are way far away from getting out of this COVID pandemic.
Evan, frankly, and I may regret these words, but I think it's over. That
Really?
yeah, because the majority of the population here and in the developing world has now been exposed to it. So if it isn't, even in countries that don't have vaccines, they suffered tremendously. They had many losses. I mean, we look at what India went through a few months ago.
Terrible,
It was
terrible.
absolutely hell. I mean, almost everyone I know lost a relative, and so did I. I lost relatives. I mean, it was just
I'm sorry to
dramatic, dramatic. But the fact is that everyone now has been infected by it. I mean, not everyone. The vast majority of people have been infected by it, and this is going to pass. We're going to forget it. I mean, you're going to see pockets of this all over the world, especially in countries like Australia, which shut their doors. Well, guess what? Now it's time of reckoning. If they don't vaccinate the vast majority of their population, they're going to start filling up their hospitals, because you can't stop this thing anymore. So what should happen is that everyone who can get vaccinated should get vaccinated. If not, you're putting yourself and your loved ones at risk, and people you don't know at risk, especially people in high risk groups. But other than that, we're done. Basically, we're going to start opening, because no country, no government can afford to keep their doors locked right now, and the restrictions, people are fed up of them. They would rather now take the risk of being exposed. And the people who are the high risk groups are generally getting vaccinated. Even in the developing world, there are now vaccines which are going around, which will inoculate the high risk populations. But again, if you look at India as an example, the vast majority of people have already been exposed to it, because you can't live there and not have been exposed to it.
Yeah, that's an amazing point. And you think about the Spanish flu of 1918. I mean, that was about a 2-year process, it seems, and we're coming up on 2 years.
We're done. Yeah.
So that's an interesting thought. Now, you were very early in talking about pandemics. Do you think this was a trial run for something potentially worse that might hit us in the next years, decade?
Evan, if you go back a year or so, when it wasn't acceptable to question whether this thing was humanly engineered, I cast aspersions that this may be a lab accident in China, that they were doing genetic engineering, and this may be a lab accident. And I actually wrote a foreign policy piece, which was more diplomatic, which said that, but the next one could be engineered. I wrote an Indian version of that for the Hindustan Times, in which I basically said that I think that this is a lab accident in China that's basically doing mass damage to the world, and China should be held liable, that they should pay reparations to the world for what they've done over here. That's what I believe. And when I said it, saying anything, because Donald Trump had said virtually the same thing, and saying anything was supporting Donald Trump was considered to be bad. And I said, because I'm not political as such, you see, I attack both sides equally, and I'm neither left, right, nor center. I'm actually more center than anything else. But that's what I believe, that this thing was a genetic engineering experiment which went bad. And I fear that now that China and rogue regimes have seen what's possible, they're going to do it again and again. This is why we need to have our defenses. And what I prescribed is that we need to now create the mechanisms to develop the good. Again, evil is what I just talked about. The good is we can now develop RNA-based vaccines virtually overnight. We need to get our defenses ready, so we can. The moment we read about another Wuhan where there's an outbreak, we get a genetic sequence from there, and we immediately build the vaccines and ship it to wherever there are outbreaks. We need to get into high gear and be prepared to defend ourselves. It's like viruses and computers and antiviruses. We're talking about the same phenomena here.
Scary yet eye-opening, which is we need open eyes looking forward to our very scary future. And I've seen you speak in person. You're a fantastic speaker when you have all of your tools and data and presentations material there. Are you doing much speaking? Are you available to speak over the next weeks, month?
Fortunately, I did my first talk in Arizona a few days ago. I mean, it was just so wonderful being in front of 1,000 people again and experiencing the energy and really, if not bonding, I mean, being able to share the excitement and there's some magic that happens when you're on stage and talking to incredible people. So I did my first, and I have 2 more coming up this year. Yeah, I'd love to give more talks. I can't wait to get out.
Or listening to this broadcast, reach out to Vivek. He's a fantastic speaker. I can attest personally, and you won't be disappointed. You'll get a glimpse into our future. Well, thanks so much for joining me on this quick chat.
Thank you, my friend.
I'm sure you'll be in Boston sometime in this upcoming year, and look forward to your tweets. So,
and I look forward to RTing you, by the way.
Okay, it's always appreciated. Take care.